The Buccaneers. God, I hated that thing. That doesn't look like a pirate. It looks like Ponce de Leon. Anyway, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were born out of expansion in 1976. They wanted to add a second team in Florida because of the popularity of the Miami Dolphins. So they picked Tampa Clearwater. And the early Buccaneers were just terrible. 0-26. The NFL decided to come up with this bright idea in 76-77 that Tampa and Seattle would play all the teams in their conference plus each other. To boot, here's the reasoning. Here's the thing. They played 14 games. They played 14 games during those 2 seasons. Tampa would play 13 teams in the all the 13 AFC teams and Seattle as well, and then would switch to the NFC, do the same thing, and then have an expansion bowl against Seattle. It's weird seeing Seattle actually in the NFC for 1 year before going to the AFC for many years until 2002. And then you have Tampa Bay in the AFC at all. Fuck. Tampa were just terrible. Steve Spurrier, if he was the guy that was basically the Heisman Trophy winner and all that, acted like the Heisman Trophy winner, the Bucs would have had some good guys. But unfortunately, John McKay was coerced into coaching the Bucs, and he had suffered through 26 straight losses. The great McKay from USC. Basically, USC would have beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers easily, like maybe 90% of the time. John McKay is also known for the insensitive comment of 3 or 4 plane crashes and we were in the playoffs. But he also says such things as, we didn't run, we didn't block, we didn't tackle. We did it. Otherwise, we were pretty good. And he also said the famous line, after a reporter says, what do you think of your team's execution? I'm all for it. That's funny. I liked it. That is kind of a cute quote. I'll say that much. Anyway, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers started at 0-26. So obviously they lost both games to Seattle, who had a better system, as it were. Tampa tried everything to try to win. And somehow, in some way, they went to the New Orleans Superdome and beat the Saints. Who were coached by Hank Stram. No, was it Hank Stram? Yeah, and then Hank Stram got fired. Archie Manning was basically being badmouthed for the fact that he said all this stuff about the Buccaneers, and then boom, the Buccaneers won. They won the last game of the year against the St. Louis Cardinals. And yes, the Cardinals were in St. Louis. We'll talk about more on that when I get to the Arizona Cardinals one. So anyway, Tampa Bay got a pair of wins. Do you know what was weird? Their defense actually picked up the slack. The Salmon brothers, Leroy and Dewey, got some other players. I can't remember who. I know about Ricky Bell being a good running back. Doug Williams was coming in his own. Yes, Doug Williams was a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, but left because Hugh Culverhouse refused to give him the going rate for an NFL quarterback. And it could also have been about skin color, but what the fuck would I know? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers actually were the byproduct of a weak NFC Central back in 1979. They were 10-6. They won. I thought they were 9-7 for the longest time, but no, they weren't. Anyway, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, strange as it sounded, 3 years after their inception, they had a chance to go to the Super Bowl against the LA Rams. Tampa was actually grateful that the Rams beat the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas because Tampa would have probably got their asses handed to them by the Cowboys. Unfortunately, though, Tampa fell flat. They lost the game, get this, 9-0. I kid you not. No touchdowns in the game. Frank Coral with 3 field goals in that game. Tampa Bay hosted the NFC Championship game. That was amazing enough. But they didn't get to the Super Bowl. So basically, that team is my what if, and of course that we'll simulate the Super Bowl against the 1979 Pittsburgh Steelers. Tampa just had problems. Their owner refused to give money. Bo Jackson refused to sign with the Buccaneers, even though he was the #1 draft pick. So basically, Bo Jackson decides to play baseball instead, and then the Raiders pick him up in the 7th round a couple years later. Amazing. So anyway, Tampa was just sluggish. They still had some good defense, but the offense was just sucky. Vinny Testaverde was not the answer. Steve Young wasn't even the answer. They had nowhere to go but up. But they were but they couldn't even go up one little iota. Tampa Bay had a few playoff appearances in the 1990s, but nothing major. However, the 2000 playoffs were a different story. Tampa shocked everyone by going to the NFC title game. But here's the funny thing. In a weird coincidence, 20 years later, they would be facing the same franchise that fucked them over the first time, the Rams, but this time in St. Louis. And Tampa thought they had the game won. Bert Emanuel caught a pass, but unfortunately they said that he bobbled it on the ground. Instant replay showed that Bert Emanuel did make a mistake, but they didn't have enough replay cameras, and the replay cameras were fixed in better situation the next year. Final score of that game, 11-6. Yet another low-scoring banana game. Ricky Proehl got the winning touchdown. Not Isaac Bruce, not Torrey Holt, but not even Ricky Proehl, of all people. Tampa, then, a few years later, actually found their stride, going to the Super Bowl, that being Super Bowl number 37, against the Oakland Raiders. Tampa had a trick up their sleeve. They hired John Gruden from the Raiders. The Raiders didn't want anything to do with John Gruden. And Gruden led the Bucs to the Super Bowl, thanks to a big win in Philadelphia. I believe that was the last time the Eagles played at Veterans Stadium before moving to Lincoln Financial Field. I'm not sure. I don't think so, but that's how I figure. So anyway, the Bucs went to the Super Bowl against Oakland. The only problem for Oakland was that they never changed their offensive or defensive signals after Gruden left. They didn't think that Gruden was going to face him in the Super Bowl. Boy, howdy, that they paid for it. 48-26. Anyone? Like six interceptions of Rich Gannon? God. The Bucs, good defense. They had a good defense. Derek Brooks, Hardy Nickerson, Dexter Jackson, Rondé Barber, John Lynch. So anyway, yeah, Tampa just had some great defense, and that defense won the title that time. Tampa, unfortunately, would not have much luck after the season, after the Super Bowl. And to this day, they don't really have a reason for doing well. Jamarius Crab Cakes Winston is not working out. So anyway, for this one, we will be taking a look at the 1979 Super Bowl. And practically, we will be looking at Bucs against Steelers. There is one little problem, though, because as everyone knows, the Rose Bowl is not part of the simulated stadiums for whatever fucking reason. I don't know. So anyway, it'll be time to roll with the punches. So, seeing this, Doug Williams, Ricky Bell, and Morris Owens, Jimmy Giles, they have to take on the 12-4 Steelers with Bradshaw Harris, Blair Stallworth Swan, and Benny Cunningham. The Gator Bowl randomly got selected, so basically they wanted to keep the tournament in Florida. And it was a boring Super Bowl. And unfortunately for the Buccaneers, they lost 26-6. So Pittsburgh still would have won the Super Bowl easily. 2 putrid field goals by Neil O'Donoghue were the only scoring. Bradshaw to Franco Harris for a touchdown. Bradshaw to John Stallworth for a touchdown. Pittsburgh didn't need a touchdown in the second half. Matt Barr hit 4 field goals. Matt Barr, 1990 Giants, getting them to the Super Bowl at the expense of the Niners. I think I talked about it in the Niners What If. Franco Harris, 127 yards on the ground. Ricky Bell, only 41. Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, great job. Doug Williams, 5 for 28. Yikes. 2 to Giles, 1 to Higgins, Bell, and Equin. Terry Bradshaw did okay. 187, passing 2 touchdowns and a pick. Jarvis White picked one off for the Buccaneers, whereas Lambert and Shell for him. Matt Donahue missed a 42-yarder. Barr hit 2 from at least that far. So you got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? No, don't fucking feel lucky, Tampa Bay. You suck.